So it was only a week. My PE teacher was the instructor.
Okay.
We learned about blue waffle, which wasn't a real thing, and I did not know that wasn't a real thing until I was 22. I'm 28 now. I remember, this is the real gag of it. We didn't have like any sort of like dildos or like any of those kind of like equipment to be able to demonstrate how to properly put on a condom.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there are no bananas on the lunch menu that day, he decided to put a condom on a stapler. Sex ed in Edgecombe County. Class of 2015. So, like, this is my
a condom
sex ed
on a
experience.
stapler is nuts.
Yes. Which, if you want to teach something about like what happens when the condom breaks, sure. But like, obviously,
even there, I'm. You've lost me.
Yes. Yes, very much that. So that was my experience with like sex ed, right? In like the educational space.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hello. Welcome to the Real Talk, Real Health Impact podcast. This is where we center the voices of lived experiences and bold ideas shaping the future of public health. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Robinson, and I'm joined here by Kahlia. Kahlia Phillips. Hello. How are you doing, ma'am?
I am doing fine. I am a tiny bit stuffy, so if you hear it, sure, hey, grace on me.
Grace on you, and we're going to give it to you. We're going to give you grace. We're going to give you grace, and we're sending well wishes and for you to get well. I'm so excited to have you on the show. So let me tell our audience a little bit about you. So Kahlia Phillips is a Black queer North Carolina native that has made the DMV area her home for the past 7 years. She received her bachelor's in accounting from NCSU and a master's in WGSS from WGW. Shout out to GW. Hello. Outside of the academy, she occasionally writes and is the host of an indie podcast that discusses history, Black sexuality, and politics. So for our virtual audience and our listeners, can we give her a virtual round of applause? Ooh, yes. So thank you so much, Kahlia, for joining me today. So can you tell our audience a little bit about your story and how did you end up doing the work that you do today?
It's so interesting because it is unconventional. So I mean, obviously, I got my bachelor's in accounting, so I'm an accountant by trade.
Okay.
So I didn't
get people's coins together.
A little bit. Help with the budgeting, help with the financial analysis, all the numbers, all the things people don't like to do.
Okay. Okay.
And but when I was at NC State's campus, I actually used to work for the Women's Center on campus. So I was there for about 3 years.
Okay.
And that was the space where I felt like my politics really deepened. Because beforehand, it was just like, oh, I'm just an accountant. Like, it really doesn't blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that's not really how that goes.
Okay.
And what really set off, like, the kind of journey I guess I have with like sexuality health and like sexuality education specifically is that I did like a research project. So I was a Robert E. McNair scholar and I did a research project and I titled it never got published. It's considered like a manuscript, but it was titled Jezebel the Virgin. And I was trying to really get an understanding of like, what is the positionality of, I guess what I thought of myself at that time as like a Black virgin, which if you understand like how people, define sex, it's complicated, way more complicated than that. But I was trying to figure out like, how am I situated within the sex positive feminist space, and kind of like was getting all the tea on the historical colonization. I'm like, oh, didn't I realize that's what we're
a lot of intersectionality there, huh? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that was that was one of those projects that felt like very like liberating for me because there was so much that I didn't know that like once I knew, it was like I can't unsee it now, and I can see it everywhere. Yeah.
They say ignorance is bliss, sis, and I think they're right because when you really start to unpack and start to see, oh, these systems were never built to help us, or, oh, these stereotypes have been a part of the norm and nobody has ever challenged them. Oh, I get it. If you don't push against the grain, how would we ever know anything different? So I love that you've come full circle of coming to this work, but starting in accounting. I'm sure the public health girlies are shook because they're like, wait, accounting?
The thing with accounting is I like to say it's kind of like the language of capitalism. So like I understand.
Ooh, wait a minute. Hold on. That's a bar. That is a bar. The language of capitalism? T. Got it.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like once you there's the decisions that are made where it's like, oh, these are like amoral people, right? Like these are people who could care less about our humanities. But when you understand them from like a business perspective, I know what dividends are. Like I know what stocks are. Like I know what those like components and like financial components are. So like I understand the financial decisions that they're making, even when I know that the larger impact of it is pretty problematic in a lot of different ways. And so
Right.
I think sometimes like I think the accounting field, like any other professional degree, I think sometimes there are ways where you can detach yourself from the politics of it all. I just choose not to because that's just not how I operate.
And everything is related to one another. And we talk about intersectionality a lot in public health. And I think that this is a great example of just that, of how, yes, capitalism is not a mutually exclusive thought to our identities or the funding streams or the things that matter to all the powers that be. And when we really look at on a granular macro and micro level, funding has everything to do with pretty much just like public health, how every and anything has public health in it. Everything has a dollar attached to it, whether we choose to acknowledge it or whether we're aware of it or not, here nor there. But the coins definitely have a lot to do with what we are experiencing, especially right now, because we're seeing funding cuts, we're seeing budget rollbacks, we're seeing people getting fired, reductions in force, all of the things. And at the end of the day, it's to save money. But
Yes.
we'll unpack that on another episode. But
yeah, and like even with that, like we may get to it, we may not, but getting into the nonprofit of it all, that's a whole different ballgame.
Right. And that tax exemption status. Okay. Good. Hold that right there. We may get to that, but we may have to bring you back on another episode so we can really get into the nitty-gritty of all of the nuances when we're talking about even nonprofit work, for-profit work, S corps, all the things. So hold that nugget and let's see if we get to it. But if we don't, you coming back. Amen. So you've talked about research, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into the storytelling aspect, because from a cultural perspective, our people are a storytelling people. We are a qualitative body, and the ways that our stories have been passed down from generations to generations is very intentional, because we didn't know how to read and write. So what we had was storytelling. So can you talk about how storytelling is used as a tool for liberation? And I think in your first undergraduate research project, what taught you about those experiences getting validated in academia?
In terms of storytelling as liberation, I think part of it is the credibility. I think another part of it is also what can be unearthed, and what because when I think about like academia and like academic writing, like, and I've had to write a thesis and all that when I was in grad school, but one of the biggest gripes that I had writing in that space was that it felt so rigid. Like the way that I talk, the way that I speak, like I quote rappers like scripture, you know what I mean? And like that, there's no space for that kind of like interjection in writing. Like it has to be done a certain way. You have to cite people who have already been published. I was going back to like my old papers, and like I can't get access to like majority of the resources that I use to even create that. So like even what happens when you graduate, you're no longer in that space. It makes storytelling kind of difficult. And so I think there is storytelling, there is a going against the grain, like not having to rely on formal education to do that work, but like being able to talk to my aunties and uncles about what was y'all doing. And I think that level of being able to be candid, that level of having to not have to be so formal, I think there are some of the greatest for me, some of the greatest components of storytelling. And then being able to like dig beneath the surface. Like, I know you don't told me this story many times, Grandma, but like, what was other stuff happening?
Right.
And like being able to dig deeper on those things is also very important to me.
Very, very. And just to know what the landscape was, because the storytelling sometimes ignores some of the things that they were going through, maybe the Great Depression, maybe they've heard about stories of slavery, or they've heard about stories of things that they didn't talk about, being in a segregated neighborhood, or that we didn't associate with certain things, or you didn't go to certain areas, and all of that generational trauma. I think I was watching something, and it talked about how a lot of, a lot of Black people will like hit each other, or will like run when we laugh.
Mm-hmm. Very expressive.
Okay. But did you hear that apparently that's generational, because when we were slaves, we couldn't laugh. So they would run and laugh in like barrels, or they would run and laugh in other places because they didn't want to get whipped for laughing about anything. And I was like, gagged. I was gagged when I heard that. Because it's very much like when we're hitting each other, it's because we generationally couldn't show any sort of joy. We couldn't, unless we were at church. We could show joy in church, but anything else, suppressed. So
that definitely underscores the concept of like Black comedy then being like kind of its own. But that's a separate conversation.
Yes, I know. We're getting sidetracked here.
No, you're good. That's just how my brain works. But getting back to what you said, like context really is an important thing when it comes to storytelling. Like one of the things I feel like I've said in my podcast was just like, even just situating myself, like I got a real whack sex ed experience when I was like in high school for like a week. Can you
tell me and tell our audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it was 4 weeks. So I'm from North Carolina. North Carolina, I think right now is a red state. I believe it was a red state when I was coming up. And so sex ed, so let me just say this. So sex ed largely is a state's issue thing. Education policy is largely regulated by the state. So not every state requires it, and not every state that requires it is teaching the same thing. So there are a lot of like different discrepancies in what people are learning or not able to learn depending on where they grew up, which is an unfortunate thing. So my high school, when I went, because me and my mom, we graduated from the same high school, like 29 years apart, small town stuff. And I think our sex ed was like opt in or something like that. You either have to opt in or opt out. I can't remember. There was a whole thing around that. And it was only a week long, which anybody that knows sex ed knows that sex ed should be just as consistent as math. Like, a process like math. So it was only a week. My PE teacher was the instructor.
Okay.
We learned about blue waffle, which wasn't a real thing, and I did not know that wasn't a real thing until I was 22. I'm 28 now. I remember, this is the real gag of it. We didn't have like any sort of like dildos or like any of those kind of like equipment to be able to demonstrate how to properly put on a condom, right? So, because there are no bananas on the lunch menu that day, he decided to put a condom on a stapler. Sex ed in Edgecombe County. Class of 2015. So, like, this is my
sex ed condom on a stapler is nuts.
Yes. Which, if you want to teach something about, like, what happens when the condom breaks, sure. But, like, obviously...
Even there, you've lost me.
Yes. Yes, very much that. So that was my experience with like sex ed, right? In like the educational space. If we think about my mom and my dad's like time, like both of my parents were born in 68, which means they were like 20 in 88.
Right.
So what was sex ed given in the height of the AIDS and crack epidemic? Let's go even farther to my grandmother. Like my grandmother has an 8th grade education. Like what? Like she was born in like the 40s, I think. Like what was her sex education experience in the 40s? Not much, even at all. So like even when you go back in time and you kind of understand like why, even as frustrating as it is, like why some of our like elders have like so many different sexual shame stories and all these different things. It's the outside landscape that really, it's the personal is political and the political is profoundly personal. And like that is the thorough line of all my work.
Mm. Woo. 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 Yeah. Okay.
Take a shot.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was a message. And I hope y'all caught it. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the fact that even now, I would say in 2026, some schools are not even talking about sex. There's still some schools are still abstinence only. Some schools don't even allow conversations about things like infectious diseases into their curriculums. And kids are having exposure younger and younger. And we are starting to see older populations, think retirement homes, have outbreaks, small outbreaks in their retirement facilities. Some of these CNAs are tricking, but that's another conversation for another day. Hello. And then you have kids who are younger than, 12, like in elementary school, starting to explore. And instead of not having the conversation, because it's like, oh, that's a baby, they don't need to know. No, they're seeing it on the internet. And I feel like now kids don't have, we had Proud Family, we had Disney Channel, we had Cartoon Network, we had all of these things. And now they have, Coco Melon and they had the Backyardigans, and then they had Peppa the Pig, Bluey. There's some things that are there, but it's like babies and then it's baddies. There's no
absolutely.
Where are the preteen kid shows? They're not as popular as they were 20 years ago. And that is a real concern, because the kids are seeing these things like Love and Hip Hop. They're seeing these shows that glorify just being ratchet and just other things. And I'm not here to play ratchet politics or say that this is good and this is bad. I'm not doing the respectability stuff. What I am saying is that our young people, especially our babies, don't really have any sort of medium. And so when you layer that with the music they're listening to, with the images they see in movies and TV shows and music videos, and then you also overlap that with the lack of information that they're getting from the school system, and then you overlap that with, you have kids wanting to explore and do things that an adult didn't teach them, or a trusted adult figure didn't teach them. Now you're coming up with cases of HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomoniasis before they even hit high school. And you're like, where do we go wrong? But you think because you don't talk to them as a parent or as a school teacher or a coach, they're not going to do it. Wrong.
I have so many thoughts. My brain just exploded.
I know. I just exploded a lot of things. So go ahead. Come on.
So there's just so many different moving parts to that, right? I think when it comes to so there are a lot of different shows that it is very babies or baddies. And I think because of I will say this, some of these Disney Channel shows, they are geared towards teens, but they're also not that good. So
right, where's the That's So Raven? Where's the Proud Family? Where's,
especially when you think about the role of colorism and the biracial girlies that are within that media space, yeah. And then you complicate that even more with queer and trans representation in media, and everybody's dying, everybody has a tragic story, and it's yes, it's rough, but I promise, guys, we be having fun.
Right.
So there's so much there, and I think even with music, because I grew up, I was listening to Yin Yang Twins when I was young. You know what I mean?
And, Yin Yang and the thing, yes.
Period. But a lot of that was also not contextualized properly, right?
Right.
If we're talking about teenagers not even having places to explore sexuality, these babies can't even go outside without the risk of being arrested, especially in places like DC where I'm close by.
But also these teen takeovers, we need to talk about it.
Yes, but it's because they don't have no place to be.
Correct, but also when 1,000 of them are going to a mall and they're going to fight or see one or two individuals fight, what are we doing? We need to be doing something constructive. I do agree they need to have a space and a place, Because we went to the mall. We went to the movies. We went to people's houses. People need to go
fought.
outside. We also fought but it was also
street.
not all over the internet. And we might have had some beef, but we didn't handle it with guns and knives and forks and spoons. We weren't doing all that.
I beg to differ. I think there are definitely eras especially we're talking about the 80s. I definitely do think that teenagers were like popping Glocks on the corner. Like I do think that was a thing. I think, but again, like all of that has to be contextualized around like where are they going? Like what is their experience in their home life? Like what is their experience in school? Like we know that Black kids are usually the most criminalized, like especially if you're Black, especially if you're queer, especially if you're visibly queer. And so like all of those things kind of go into it. Like what is their housing situation, right? Like what is their access to food? Like food insecurity is a real thing, and like especially Southeast DC, like those parts of DC. So like all of those things contribute as to why like some people get robbed. That's a real thing, and we have to acknowledge that like there are real material reasons as to why people cause material harm. I think beyond kind of going back to the sex ed thing, I also think that too, like there's a gross misconception as to like what sex ed is, that I think a lot of people think of sex ed as like, oh, you're learning the mechanics of sex, and it's like not at K through 12. That's your ride 'em cowgirl video, videos.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That's your how to do a BJ type stuff. Like that's adult stuff. But like at the very level in kindergarten, people need to know, like kids need to know their body parts. Kids don't even know their body parts.
No.
Kids that can't even say their body parts out loud, the correct name, because there are adults that are ashamed about that. How can you teach a child to not be shamed if the adults in their lives are filled with shame? So there's just like, and then like there are different building blocks that are necessary for a teenager to be able to explore properly. Like, yes, like teenagers are unfortunately experiencing these like STI rates, and also like what is the emotional maturity to be able to handle that? Like yes, preventative healthcare is important, and also if it don't happen, because 80% of people who are sexually active do end up with an STI. I'm one of those people. How are you then communicating?
Most of us are.
Yes. How are you then communicating with people? How are you then shifting your sexual health behaviors and practices in light of that? And I think that a lot of those details are not a part of it. It becomes like, don't do this, don't do that. If you do that, you could get an STI. And there's so much to be talked about when it comes to sexuality, so much to be talked about when it comes to gender, and even the history of it. Like the invention of women. Like there's just so many things that you can really get into to like make it like a small elective class. It's just like we're not doing nearly enough. And like these conversations should be womb to tomb. Everybody should be covered from every. Older people have sex, y'all. That's why they be having high STI rates in the nursing home. Sex ed is for everybody. And I don't think we understand that for real.
And so much of the shame is stemmed from things that are societal norms. And some of it is stereotypes. Some of it is generational trauma. Some of it stems from being hypersexualized. Some of it stems from the music we listen to or the images people see in the media about certain cultures or certain genders or certain demographics. So I want to say, as an infectious disease researcher, as an advocate, and as somebody who fights every single day to educate people in general audiences, is that sex is not a bad thing. Now, when you are engaging in it, we need people to be responsible. So if you are going to have a one night stand, be clear about what that means and what that entails, and make sure you're protecting yourself. Because at the end of the day, no matter if you are 12 or you are 21, or if you are 45, or if you're married, or if you are recently divorced, or if you're Meemaw in the home getting it popping, and you're 97, whatever the ages are, that is irrelevant, because you can only control yourself, and you can only protect yourself with the tools that are out there. And so if you are going to be active, these are the tools in which you should have in your toolbox to be able to make the best informed decisions. Sex should be good. Sex should be pleasurable. Sex is fun. Sex can be a lot of things, but for some people it's traumatic. For some people it's scary. For some people it's how they make a living. So there's a lot of nuanced kind of layers in there. And I love talking about not only sex, but just how to be more sex positive, how to be more inclusive of those that have different types of sex, and just making sure that people understand that at the end of the day, you can only control you, and the people around you and the norms and the historical context, all of that is fine and dandy. But if you are grown enough to understand yes and no, you're also grown enough to learn about body parts. You're also old enough to learn about autonomy. You're old enough to have the conversations about what does consent mean? What does it mean when you're under the influence and you can't give consent? What are the barriers? What are the boundaries that we should be setting? And we should be having these conversations, like you said, even for the babies. Because again, you shouldn't be touching people in certain places. If you have a bathing suit on, those are no places, period. So having the conversations with young people and babies is a different conversation than what we would say to the mimas and whatnots and the retirement homes. But everybody in between also needs to have this education. And we should stop thinking that, because they're babies or because they're older, we shouldn't be having these talks. But then when nudes are getting sent around the school, now all of a sudden we're gooped and gagged. Or when there's an outbreak happening at the nursing home and you're getting a letter about it, you're just flabbergasted.
Why?
Right.
And why is that?
Right. Like what? So yeah, I love that we're, unpacking some of these stereotypical things, but the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. The more we normalize it, the more it breaks down the stigma, because stigma is one of the biggest killers that are out there. And a lot of people don't really talk about some of these uncomfortable conversations because they're scared, or because they're fear of judgment, or because they think, okay, if I'm not talking about it, it's not happening. But we clearly know abstinence only has really done a disservice to the education and community.
A lot of people have been harmed.
A lot of people got, when they said no child left behind, a lot of people got left.
They back there.
Okay, so can we talk a little bit about if someone wanted to start their own personal syllabus, because you've created your own personal syllabus. So I would love to hear a little bit more about the personal syllabus. But if someone were to create their own personal syllabus on sexuality, politics, and healing, what are your top 2 or 3 must reads, must watches, or follows right now?
Oh God. Top 3. In terms of follow, I would say definitely Erica Hart. She, they, non-binary Black femme. She is a huge reason as to why, I have a strong political understanding of sex ed. Because beforehand, I was kind of in that kind of liberal space. Yeah, people should know their bodies. People should know what gender is and what that means. But the beyond that part, right? I took a class with her, and one of the first things we talked about when it came to bodily autonomy is redlining. What does it mean to actually have bodily autonomy when they're telling you can't get a mortgage because you in the red zone?
Yeah.
Complicating all of that and really getting an understanding that sex is not just sex. It's connected to a whole lot of other stuff. And that also needs to be unearthed if we're going to actually make some strides in liberatory, affirming sex lives for all of us, whether you want it or not. And she also just dropped a book called Nasty Work that I'm currently reading that I suggest that folks should read.
Okay.
Another person, I would say Deshaun Harrison. I believe they use they, them pronouns, and they talk a lot about Black transness, but also from the perspective of people in larger fat bodies, and how that even shifts how they're perceived in their gender expression, or even just their interaction with the medical facility, medical racism, medical fat phobia. Oh, you have to lose a certain amount of pounds to be able to even get top surgery, as an example. So like how all those things, they wrote Belly of the Beast. I would read that. And then third is hard. I would say probably third is hard. Maybe I would say Sabrina String's Fear in the Black Body. That talks a lot about the legacy of fat phobia for Black women, I think more specifically. But just like the legacy of what that came from, colonization, BMI being fake, and like was really, pushed because of like insurance companies. And had no like real diversity of bodies as even a part of that. So a lot of those like untethering those things that we think are just kind of like is
the norm.
What it is.
Yeah, and
that it's like, no, there's a history behind this.
Right.
Also, special honorable mention, medical apartheid. It's a hard read. It's important.
Great read. Great suggestions. And who are you inspired by?
Again, Erica Hart, but I'm inspired by people who walk the walk and talk the talk, and that's not necessarily like a specific name. I think I'm inspired by people who didn't automatically obey and comply with fascist things, right? Like I'm inspired by people who are still masking in this pandemic era. Like I'm inspired by people who understand what the right thing is, even when a lot of people are looking the other way, and just being like, yeah, I'm going to do this because it's important and it needs to happen. Yeah. Regardless of like what the trend is or what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
I grew up bullied. You can't really faze me too much no more.
I'm screaming.
I grew up being the kid that did my own thing. Like, you really can't shake a bad bitch. But...
Nah, you can't. You can't shake them. Never. That's important to have folks on our platforms to understand some of the ways that they can follow maybe similar like-minded individuals, or looking outside of themselves and their normal cadence of literature or folks that they follow to have a different perspective. I do sometimes think that in social media, sometimes the algorithms actually suck when it comes to like seeing people that you're only aligned with. And I don't necessarily want to see people that I'm not politically aligned with, because that would just like make me want to throw my phone. But it always is good to have, a different landscape to kind of see, because it's refreshing. And sometimes when random things pop up on my algorithm, I'll be like, ooh, this is good. I don't follow this person, but I'm intrigued. I love Threads because that is where just there's so many different walks of life on Threads. And sometimes I see things that I'm so aligned with and I'm like, oh, this algorithm is real good. And sometimes I see things on other platforms where I'm like, how did this even, what's happening here?
How we share the same internet?
Like, how is there a brain in there? Because this is not, the math not mathin'. But I say all that to say we are all like 6 degrees of separation. And I'm so happy that you came on the show and are sharing your expertise and your experience. I would love to have you share with the audience as well that a little bit, if you can, just about your kind of trajectory of what you're doing now. And if there are ways that if folks are aligned, something that resonated with them, maybe it was the followers, the folks that they should follow, the literature they should read, or maybe it's the pathway in which you stemmed from accounting, but yet you're in the public health space. Like, can you talk to our audience maybe a little bit about why you do what you do, and if they need to kind of be in alignment of maybe they don't have it all figured out, right? Because none of us really do. We're all just winging it for the first time here. But if you have any suggestions for folks who maybe aren't in public health, but maybe should think about it.
I That's a good question. I would say in terms of what I'm doing now, I'm just working. Unfortunately, I had to take a break because once I switched jobs, like podcasting and then working 40 hours a week was like a bit too much for my brain. I would say podcast is a podcasting specifically is a lot more work than I think a lot of people kind of give it credit to. It's not necessarily just like getting on the mic and talking. There were a lot of hours that went into my podcast, like
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
And so I think that like when it comes to like something that I've done, which is really like create my own thing, it really just came from a place of like true curiosity. So I'm one of those people. I do be talking to the lady to get the cars read and all that. And but I had like a different. She has like a wide set of skills. So I was talking to her about career counseling stuff because I was in a weird place with my job. And I was telling her about like, you know, what I just got my degree in and like all the specific interests that I have around like comprehensive sex education and all these different things. And she suggested, she was like, well, why don't you just do like a Q&A, like an IG live or something? And so like the podcast really started out as an IG live. But then I realized I hate being on camera. That's the worst thing in the world, but it's not my favorite. I'm not like, you know, on top of things with like the visuals and stuff. And so midway through like the first season, I just switched everything to audio and it just became audio. So it really is like me deciding to do a thing and then just do it and just see how far I get with it.
Do it scared, right? Because you don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah, doing it scared, doing it imperfect. Like my graphic designs are not great, but like I was exploring and I was trying something new and like I was trying something different each season. And that's good enough for me. You know what I mean? And like, I was willing to like try and experiment with certain things. And that honestly, at the end of the day, that's really a big part of it. Like being willing to experiment, being willing, you know, it's like those shows where like there'd be someone like a mad scientist or something and like their experiment like blows up in their face and they're like hair. You have to be willing to do that. Like, you have to be willing for the experiment
stand
to
on
as
it.
well.
Yeah.
And honestly, yes, really stand on it. And come with it with like genuine curiosity. I think the topics that I had were, I was like genuinely interested and I genuinely wanted to answer questions about it. And I wanted to know more from my own accord. And as I'm like kind of working through what I'm taking notes on, like I'm coming to like different conclusions as I go. So like I'm also learning in public in a way.
Yeah.
And so being willing to do that and be humble about it, is something that is really key, because it could be easy to get bogged down around, especially me. Like, I don't know who's gonna listen. Like, I don't know if anybody cares.
Who cares?
But it's like, really, like, who cares? If you and your homies are the only ones that listen to it, then maybe this is an opportunity for y'all to like really engage in like a legitimate conversation about it. So it doesn't have to be something that saves the world, but it was my own little thing in my own little corner, and that's my baby.
And that's good. And sometimes people need to hear that it doesn't need to be this polished, perfect, whether it's a career path or that you stepped out on faith and you trusted that you could maybe achieve a goal that you set out for yourself. But in this highlight reel culture, a lot of folks can be very intimidated from even feeling like, oh my God, there's so many podcasts. Oh my God, there's so many things that are out there of people talking about this or talking about that. But there's nobody on this earth like you. There's only one you. And even though people are starting to look alike and they're getting all this filler put in every which way and all these other things, there's still only one person that is you and wonderfully made. So why not lean into whatever you can bring to the table? Because if everybody's thinking, oh, somebody already has that or someone's already doing that, so who cares?
Also,
you can do it too. How many Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and somebody said this the other day, they were like, how many Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and coffee shops are there on one block? Do you think they care? No. So you should have that same mentality of, even if you're doing something, do it differently. Do it because you want to do it and do it because you love doing it and not for the views, the clicks, the likes, the the thoughts of others. Do it because there's a passion inside of you. Because the people that follow you and rock with you, they're going to continue to do so because they like you for you. Not necessarily because, oh my gosh, her content is good. Or, oh my gosh, her visuals are great. I mean, that helps, but that's not why people follow or buy into your brand and your story. They care because you come to this work authentically and you show up imperfect. And those are the things that resonate with the general masses. That clean cut kind of my life is perfect. Yeah, hang that up.
No.
Hang
and
it.
then I'll say two things about that. First off, there are so many different ridiculous things that are being like hit play and published. Put your stuff out there, please. Put your stuff out there. And then the other thing is start with what you got. Like I use my voice memo app on my phone to do my episodes. That's it. I don't have no space on my phone now because of it. But that's what I use. That's what I had, and that's what I use. And my audio was clean enough, was crisp enough. You can hear me. So use what you got.
Yeah. And start small. You don't have to have a large following to make a difference. You can have, if you have 25 really supportive people, I would much rather have 25 ride or die people that will bring my name up in rooms I'm not in, rather than have 25,000 people that wouldn't even support me over a can of paint, but they follow me because they nosy and they pocket watching.
Yeah. Very much that.
Okay. So as we get ready to close here, can you tell our audience, where does public health show up in your work, even behind the scenes?
Oh, I think for me now, like public health is more so about like, what am I doing versus like, what am I talking about? So I've been like kind of trying to pivot into like more volunteer stuff. So like park cleanups, for example.
Oh, that's so wholesome.
Yeah, I love nature. I love being in nature, and it's one of those things. And I don't know the full. We ain't studied it yet. I don't know the full thing with like volunteer work and all those different things, right? Because there's always something. But as it stands, just being able to be around like a bunch of other folks who are like, yeah, we're gonna clean up this spot, and like the park ends up being a little bit better than how we got there. Is like it does something to the brain for me, and I think outside of that, I think at this point, I'm more so just like keeping my ear to the streets. Like, what's happening in the news? Like, what's happening with this? What is it called? The hantavirus.
Hantavirus.
All
yep.
all these new things. Like, how am I understanding it? How am I processing this information? And then like, how am I also reworking my behaviors based on that new information? Yeah. So a lot of like my public health stuff is really just like me getting my shit
staying
together.
informed. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that if I transition out of this career or like this job, or maybe I end up somewhere where I'm part-time, because that's how I was able to like podcast a little bit more, then I might come back. We'll see what else I have to talk about, because I think I also got to a point where I was like, I don't have nothing else to say.
You laid it all on the table.
Yeah, at least at that point. So, we'll see what happens in the future. I do want to get transcriptions, up and running, my voice, because there's what Spotify and all that would give, and then there's how I would say it. So that is something. But yeah, outside of what was already created, like just trying to get like my behaviors, and like also just being in community who like have that same mentality. So like us putting our heads together and like being collaborative around our practices as well. Yeah. It's also, a big part of how public health shows up in my life.
I love that. So I appreciate you coming on to the show and sharing in this conversation for Real Talk, Real Impact. And before we close, do you have any shout outs that you want to share with our audience? Maybe websites, your social media, any place that folks can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I do have a website for the podcast. It is www.theblksexedproject.com. I had to condense Black, so BLK specifically. Okay. And I'm also at the Black Sex Ed Project on Instagram as well, so you can get old clips of the IG lives, or you can just get newer snippets of like past episodes. I have like a highlight reel, like all the episodes for each season. Nice. I do recommend season 3.
Specifically?
If I had to rank season 3, season 1, and season 2. That's my ranking.
Okay. Okay. So, folks, she says start with 3. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. And I just want to tell our audience to keep showing up, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for better. And until next time, we'll see ya. Bye, guys.
Bye.